Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to take that sack of sources you gave us and, pull out the insights you really need. And today, wow, we are diving into one of the most, let's say, frustrating and often hated topics in any company, performance management, PM. You tasked us with a deep dive into this recent paper by Kevin R. Murphy, and the title says it all: The Illusion of Performance Management. His argument, and it's a strong one, is that the whole PM system we use today is just, it's fundamentally broken.
It's a serious indictment. So our mission today is to really unpack that critique. It's something every manager, every HR leader, really every employee who sat through a painful review needs to hear. We're going to connect his ideas to what you actually face every day. And crucially, we're going to bring in an external perspective that I think really sharpens the whole analysis.
Yeah, it does. And before we jump in, just a quick nod to your request.
Yeah.
If this kind of stuff fascinates you, you really should be following the Contrarian HR podcast on Spotify. Check out their articles on Substack. There are hundreds.
Yeah.
And their YouTube videos. They live and breathe these issues.
They do. Okay, so let's set the stage with Murphy's opening shot. He says PM has been adopted, everywhere over the last couple of decades. It's the standard. But when you actually look for the proof, the hard data, there's shockingly little evidence that it works, or that it has any reliable positive effect on performance. He even says the field can't seem to agree on what PM is supposed to accomplish in the first place.
And that lack of agreement is huge, isn't it? If the experts don't know the goal, how can a manager on the ground possibly get it right? Murphy says the whole thing is built on destructive goals and procedures that are provably wrong. He calls them long-discarded theories of management.
And that is the perfect entry point for this external critique we mentioned, because it explains why it feels like an illusion. Many people, and I think Murphy falls into this a bit, they fail to make one critical distinction.
Like, I'm listening. What's the distinction?
It's the difference between performance management and performance measurement.
Management versus measurement.
Okay. Yes. Performance management is the daily stuff. The coaching, the training, guiding, removing roadblocks, facilitating success. Performance measurement, on the other hand, is just about the metrics, the KPIs, the goals, and, that big, scary annual appraisal.
The final grade.
The final grade, exactly. And as critics like Sylvia Ola have pointed out, organizations focus almost entirely on the measurement, on the appraisal, because that's where the money is. The budget, the compensation decisions.
So managers are just teaching to the test, so to speak.
They are. And here's the key takeaway for every leader listening. If you and your supervisors aren't actively managing performance every single day, you honestly don't have the right to measure it at the end of the year. The system feels like an illusion because we've confused that one-time measurement event with the real ongoing work of management.
That reframing makes so much sense. It's not about the performance. It's about thinking a final score can replace a year of actual support. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at the goals of PM that Murphy says are so flawed.
Right. So he identifies two main concepts at the heart of PM: alignment and enforcement. Alignment is that classic idea of cascading goals, right? Connecting what you do every day to the big company strategy. And enforcement is, well, it's the supervisor's job to make sure you do it.
Which, on paper, sounds fine. We all want to be rowing in the same direction. So what's the flaw? Why is trying to align people a bad thing?
It's not the what, it's the how. The flaw is in the method. This rigid top-down cascade of goals is, at its core, a system of control. It systematically strips away two things we know employees value most: autonomy and responsibility. I mean, research from decades ago, Hackman and Oldham, proved this.
So when a goal is just handed to you, you stop feeling like you own it. You're just a cog.
You're just a cog. You're an executor, not a creator. It turns complex, interesting work into a checklist.
And this is where the history lesson gets really interesting. Murphy says modern PM is basically a direct descendant of scientific management. Frederick Taylor, 1911. Is that fair? I mean, is it really just old-school Taylorism with new buzzwords?
The spirit of control is identical, even if the tools look different. Think about Taylor's most famous story, with the worker Schmidt loading pig iron. Taylor's instructions were incredibly specific. He said something like, when he tells you to pick up a pig and walk, you walk. When he tells you to sit down, you sit down. And no back talk.
Check your brain at the door. I'll do the thinking for you.
Exactly. Taylor used a stopwatch and direct physical commands. Today's PM uses frequent feedback and detailed performance plans.
But the role of the supervisor is the same.
It's identical. Enforce directions from above. It's just shifted from controlling the body to controlling behavior and thought. And that just crowds out any chance for supportive leadership.
But I have to push back a little. I mean, doesn't any big company need some alignment? some structure. Where's the line between coordination and, destructive control?
That is the core tension. And that's where distinguishing management from measurement helps again. Coordination is part of management, sure. But when that coordination kills autonomy, when it makes an employee feel like they have no discretion, you lose them. The problem isn't having goals. It's the assumption that goals must be rigidly cascaded and then enforced through constant monitoring.
Which makes the move to frequent check-ins feel less like coaching and more like, I don't know, surveillance.
A subtle, continuous monitoring system.
Yes. Okay, let's shift to that key tool then, frequent feedback,
Mm.
and why Murphy argues it's just a trap.
Right. So modern PM rests on three legs: cascading goals, those detailed, inflexible plans, and the holy grail itself, frequent informal feedback. The assumption is just universal. More feedback equals better performance, period.
But the data doesn't back that up.
Not at all. There was this huge review back in 1996 by Kluger and Denisi. They looked at over 3,000 studies on feedback. Their conclusion was pretty sobering. On average, feedback has a small positive effect, but the key word there is average. The variability is just huge.
Okay, tell us about the variability. What's the downside?
This is the critical part. They found that over one-third, more than 33% of all the feedback they studied actually had a negative effect on performance.
Wait, say that again? 1 in 3 times, the feedback made the person's performance worse.
Actively worse. It didn't just not help, it dragged them down.
That is an astonishing risk for a business to take.
It is. And the upside is tiny. Over 90% of the positive effects they saw were small. So you're taking this huge risk for a marginal gain. And we know the costs are real for employees. Resentment, stress, conflict with your boss, just terrible work attitudes.
And the really wild part, which every manager needs to hear, is why even positive feedback can land so badly. It feels like you can't even get praise right.
Right, and this gets into basic psychology, attributional bias. We all do it. We consistently overestimate our own performance. When we succeed, it's because of our talent and hard work. When we fail, oh, that's external factors, bad luck, not enough resources, you know the drill.
So in my head, I'm an A-plus player, but my boss gives me feedback that I'm a solid B-plus so, and I hear, you're average.
You hear you're average and it feels unfair. Because your self-assessment is so high, even positive feedback that doesn't match it feels like a criticism. There's research that shows when feedback is perceived as inaccurate, even if it's positive, people react negatively. They get defensive. They start thinking about leaving.
It sounds like the whole system is perfectly designed to trigger our worst human biases.
It really is. And if goals are clear, experienced people already know how they're doing, more feedback is just administrative noise.
So if PM is an illusion that just creates stress and bureaucracy, what are we supposed to do instead? What's the alternative?
Murphy's message is actually quite simple. Stop trying to manage performance with control and start supporting it with leadership. And he offers two big alternatives. The first one is really provocative, especially for HR folks.
Yeah.
He argues that the old, hated traditional performance appraisal might actually be better than these new, simplified PM systems.
Better. How? Everyone hates the annual review.
Because for all its flaws, it was formal, it was documented, it covered multiple parts of your job, you had a formal way to give input, and most importantly, it gave you clear, actionable information linking your performance to your pay.
That documentation part is huge for legal compliance.
Absolutely. Some of these new PM systems, they use these vague questions like, would I want this person on my team? That gives you nothing. It's legally risky and provides no clear basis for compensation. We traded clarity for what exactly?
So that's the structural alternative. Bring back some of the old formality.
Yeah.
What about the leadership piece for managers?
That's the second, and I think more important, shift. A focus on supportive leadership. This goes all the way back to studies in the 1940s. Good leadership has two parts. The first is initiating structure, clarifying expectations, defining roles. That's the good part of what PM tries to do.
And the second part?
Is consideration.
Consideration. Okay, let's unpack that because it sounds like the polar opposite of top-down enforcement.
It is. It means showing genuine trust and concern for your employees. It means valuing their input, actually supporting them, putting the person ahead of the dictated goal. And this is where leadership and PM just go in completely different directions. Leadership theories, servant, transformational, you name it. They're all about pushing power and responsibility down to the lowest level. PM is about pulling control up.
So a leader sees an employee as an expert to be enabled, but a PM manager sees an employee as a variable to be controlled.
Perfectly put, and that leads right to the supervisor's new job. You stop being a monitor and you become a coach. a facilitator. Your job is to remove obstacles. We know coaching works, it has moderate positive effects, but, and this is a huge but, Murphy warns that the role of coach is fundamentally in conflict with the role of evaluator.
Right? It's hard to be vulnerable and talk about your weaknesses with the same person who decides your bonus.
Exactly. You can't have real trust and psychological safety in that situation, which kneecaps the coaching before it even starts.
So when we put it all together, the illusion of performance management seems to be this broken architecture. You've got a rigid structure of control with cascading goals, and you're using a tool, frequent feedback, that is empirically flawed. The basic problem isn't performance. It's the arrogance of thinking performance needs to be managed by force rather than supported through leadership.
And that brings us back to Murphy's final point, which is a call to action. We desperately need more research. We rolled out these new PM systems based on, what? Gut feelings and consultant promises, not data. We know a lot about how old-school appraisals worked, for better or worse. We know almost nothing about how these modern systems actually function in the real world, how employees see them, or how they affect performance and fairness in the long run.
That really is the heart of it, isn't it? We've been running a 20-year experiment with no control group and no real proof. So the final thought for you to take away is this. If this illusion comes from confusing daily support, the real management, with that one-time event of measurement, how can you, as a manager or an employee, start pushing your organization to focus on that daily support? How can you make sure that when appraisal day comes, that measurement feels earned and fair, not like a judgment handed down from on high? Are you supporting performance, or are you just enforcing a strategy? Something to think about until our next deep dive.